Tonight's case is Gabby Petito. Remembering the soul's purpose is here to learn and to evolve. What does Gabby's soul have to teach us? And what was her soul here to learn? Take a moment and let's set the tone for tonight's case. Deep inhale through the nose. Exhale, blow it out. Deep inhale through the nose. Exhale, blow it out. Close the eyes for just a moment and allow yourself to just be still. Allow the mind to wander. Allow the shoulders to relax, the jaw to release, and the forehead to be at ease as we go into discovery of what Gabby's soul was here to teach and here to learn. It will help us to discover why we are here and what we are here to learn. Welcome. Welcome to True Crime Psychic Eye. My name is Maryam, and I am a psychic medium and a teacher of spirituality. Tonight, we are doing the read of Gabby Petito. Denise is also a psychic medium and a life doula and Reiki healer who helps women align with their inner wisdom to become their own maven. Myself and Denise do not follow or read up on true crime specifically, so we can come in as clear as possible. But of course, many cases are very high profile, such as this one. So if we have heard anything or read up on the case, this will be shared at the top of the episode. This is a case, of course, we're both familiar with, but neither one of us have read it intuitively yet or have read up on it. Please join us over on Patreon at Maryam Farish, as we've got all kinds of stuff going on over there. If you are an enthusiast of paranormal or true crime or spirituality, all of those are a part of your tiers, or you can separate those out. As we begin to dive into cases that are newer than what we typically do, it is important for us to always be mindful of being respectful to the families involved, to not diminish the pain and suffering, and to not point blame or judgment. So we encourage a community experience. So please include your questions, bring your intuition, all of that in the chat. If there's anything that we feel we should not be verbalizing out loud for the safety of our team or the case being discussed, we will decline to answer. Any tangible information we get, we, of course, will pass on to authorities. With that being said, let's begin. Tonight, the discovery on Gabby Petito, obviously a case that has been, investigated and read by psychics and authorities upside down, backwards, all over the place. So we're going to try and take a little bit of a different approach tonight, approaching it more from a place that feels a little bit more accurate for us than, your typical read. Some of the things that stood out to me with this case is one of the viewers sent us the orb, obviously that orb photo. We're going to look at that. Something that stood out to me when we decided to do this case was, did we miss something regarding Brian Landry and his parents? Do you pronounce it Landry or Laundries? I think it's Landry.
I think it's Landry. I think
Landry. What does Gabby's soul want to teach us from this experience? And what was Gabby's soul purpose while on Earth? And of course, any questions you guys have, to also bring those into the chat. So how are you, Denise?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. This is going to be a really interesting read. I feel like one of the things that I want to start with first is Brian Landry and his parents. Something just has never really sat right for me. And I feel like you just sort of feel the same way, the way you sort of shook your head on that.
Yeah, I kept feeling I feel like Brian may come through.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't think of that. Interesting. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm going to look at these photos that I pulled up, specifically of his parents. I noticed with the parents when I first saw these pictures that there was this sense of like doing this, like not wanting to know, choosing not to know. And I don't mean about anything specific. I'm talking more as a whole in life. Because one of the things that we want to really touch on is how do we end up in these places? Like, how do we get here? Like, like, one of the things that I've always said to like my husband is when you're watching cases, uh, whatever is horrific tragedy, and people are like, oh, no one saw it coming. And I'm like, did they really not see it coming? Like, I'm not saying that anyone saw this specific tragedy coming, but what I ask is, was there really not signs that Brian may have been dangerous?
Hmm.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I'm
Right.
asking that question, right? So, without pointing the finger, when I'm right now, the pictures I'm looking at are of Brian and his family. And there is a sense of doing this. And I mean that like metaphor, like not paying attention to what's going on around them. There's this sense of it's like there's these three people all living in silos, all seeing very different realities on life. And again, let me clarify, this isn't necessarily specific to this case. I'm looking at the family from back here first and seeing if this information can help explain how we ended up here. So if you have these three people living in their silos and not seeing the behavior of the person next to them, not acknowledging them, being very in denial about things. And then we have a person in Brian who was a little there was something about his personality that gave him a sense of entitlement. And where that comes from, I don't know, but there's this sense of entitlement that he carried, and when he didn't get his way, that's when things got ugly. And when we don't get our way and we don't have the coping skills, whether again that comes from mental illness or that comes from a purely entitlement position, I don't know. I'm just stating the energy that I'm being shown is this sense of I'm not getting what I want and what I need. And so what am I going to do about that? And because he grew up in this family where everyone's life was very siloed and there was never accountability or acknowledgement of what was going on either side and with the other person, you just keep doing what you want until you get what you want, how you want it.
Hmm. I feel like when he was younger, it was easier to appease him and give him what he wanted. And so that behavior continued throughout his his life.
Mhm.
And I mean, and I get it. I've been a parent. I know how sometimes your toddlers will throw one too many tantrums that day, and you're like, fine, eat all of the box of cookies. I don't care if you just stop having a fit. And so I get it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
However, you can't do that for everything.
Mhm. Right.
And I have a feeling that that happened frequently enough that
Mm.
he could get away with things.
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like there was just a little bit of, like you said, his parents would kind of turn a blind eye to some of the things. It's like, oh, he's just being a boy. That's what
Mm-hmm.
boys do. It's not that bad, you know. And I know this is going to sound awful, but it's almost like, you know, if you pulled the wings off of a fly or something, it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's just boy stuff. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but that is a little odd.
And the accountability wasn't there. And
Right.
when you look at it from that through that lens, where there's all these silos, right, of not requiring accountability, and also turning a blind eye to not just his behavior, but to the mother and the father did that to each other. They
Hmm.
did that to things in their life. And so they were continuing to not acknowledge the truth around them. So when this all unravels and their behavior is starting to look sketchy or seem sketchy, it's actually behavior they've been showing their whole lives.
Right.
When you take that behavior and you apply it to a murder,
Right.
yeah, that's a lot different than taking that behavior and applying it to a child who, like you said, or an adult who
Hmm.
is behaving as an entitled,
Right.
right?
It's like the way you have them separated out. It's almost like they lived in the same house, but they were completely disassociated with each other. So on a
Yes.
surface level, they would, okay, you take the dog out. I'm going to take the kids to baseball. You know what I mean? It was just
Mhm.
very mechanical.
Mhm.
And so if they really would, if they didn't, if they would, because like you said at the top of the show, didn't follow. I heard of it, but I didn't
Mhm.
follow it. And so my feeling is on this is that if they were like, we had no idea, I think on one hand they really didn't have any idea because they were so disassociated from each
Yeah.
other on a deeper level that they really didn't. I mean,
Mhm.
is there still that little niggling in the back of their mind, like, oh, could he have done that?
Mhm.
Sure, but they didn't think he would, kind of thing.
Well, that you said it. That's where I was going to with it is the ability to disassociate, the ability to not connect is so prevalent and so intense that it's going to intensify even more when they're under pressure, when they're scared.
Hmm.
And they're not going to, and I'm not saying they haven't changed or grown since the incident. We're just speaking up until the moment
Right.
and how they manage that moment and why it's looking like there's holes in the story because they are continuing to silo themselves and do things they shouldn't be doing because of the denial. And then on top of that, though, when we silo ourselves and we don't pay attention to the person we live with, whoever it may be to us, things are going to happen and unravel that you're going to have to be responsible for because of your direct connection to them. So we don't want to shut ourselves out or be in denial of what you think you're seeing because if you're witness to that, that's going to come back around to you at some point and you're going to have to address that. I'm not saying it's your fault, but your part of bearing witness is going to show itself. So what do I do now? I bear witness to this. But when you never choose to bear witness to something and you just keep plowing through life with these blinders on, at some point you hit and they hit. Now, some people don't hit that wall till they're much older. Some people may not hit that wall till they actually pass. This was obviously not the case with them. So I feel like there were things missed. And as far as their involvement in covering something up,
Hmm.
and, uh, but at the end of the day, the story unfolds the same. Like what was missed was being able to hold them more accountable than they were. And what was missed wasn't purposely missed, it was missed because there's this gray area where it could have gone either way, meaning they could have been sort of caught and busted for it, how they contributed, or slid past and not been. And it could have gone either way because both ways could be proven. But when you have such a gray area, and at the end, and you have human beings making decisions based off of fact and some emotion, I think that the truth is intuitively you can tell they didn't help him do this. They didn't tell him to do this.
Mhm.
They helped after the fact. And I think that's where that gray area hit, which allowed them to sort of, I think they got off, they didn't get in trouble for anything, if I know correctly. There wasn't any, right? They didn't get blamed for
Yeah,
anything.
that I am not 100% sure of because, like I said, I don't really don't know much about this case, but I feel like from an intuitive standpoint that they, without being guilty of anything, because they weren't, um, they felt parental guilt as that they should have seen this, done something, did
Mhm.
they didn't have anything to do with it. I want to make that very clear. They had nothing to do with it. And at the same time, they, as just as parents, and if any of our viewers out there are parents, you do feel responsible for things your children do, even
Mhm.
even though it's not you that did it and you've
Mhm.
done your best as a parent. Sometimes you still feel like, gosh, I should have seen that one coming, or whatever the case might be. And sometimes
Mhm.
we just don't.
No, I think that's really fair to say, and that I agree with all of that too. And I think this is why this this discovery point kept sort of pushing at me, why intuitively I wanted to add it to tonight, was because this is an example of how we can track behavior, how we can look back and say, "Oh, that's how that happened."
Hmm.
Sorry, let me clarify. Not in regards to Brian, in regards to the parents. We can look at the parents' behavior and everything we just talked about, how they lived in these silos, how they weren't looking, paying attention, all these things. You can see, that's where that lined up. That's where that lines up. Now we understand why they behaved the way they behaved at the time that all this blew up. Who's
Right.
that?
This is Bridget, and it's about inner strength. So the parents had to find their inner strength in order to be able to, in the best they could, rectify what they
Mm-hmm.
were capable of doing. So they had to find an inner strength that they had not had
Mm-hmm.
prior to this.
Yep.
It's a, because what I keep seeing between them, and then, do you remember those, um the old man and the old woman with the pitchfork? Is that
Oh,
a,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Green Acres.
well, that, or like, what was the was it Rockwell, Norman Rockwell? Did he do that painting maybe? At any rate, so it kind of reminds me of, like, this is how we are. This is what we do. We have done this our entire lives, blah, 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 blah,
Mm.
blah. And this is just how our lineage operates in the world.
And
And
we're not changing that.
right. And so I feel like with the parents, whether they agreed with it or not, they went along with it because it was just how the things were done in their family.
Yeah, that's just stuck in their ways.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
So the parents need a little, we need to forgive the parents a little bit. I know we want to kind of point fingers at them. But if the law has found them not guilty, we have to find forgiveness for them and allow them to have been human
Mhm.
and doing the best they can. And remembering that when our souls come into here, into body, they choose those parents. So those parents needed to learn a lesson from the child, and the child needed to learn lessons from the parents. And the fact that the child is no longer here, regardless of how that ended,
Mm-hmm.
they learned their lesson or he would not be gone.
Beautifully said. Let's look at this picture. Denise, why don't you start?
When I saw this, and I didn't intend to read it, and then as soon as I got it, I stopped. I feel like that orb is a grandfather figure from the other side, and I think he was just there to be a part of the family photo.
Mm-hmm.
That's how what I take from it. I don't know how you feel about that. Because when you sent it just to have like the other day to prep for this, I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, hi, hi, Grandpa. But I could be wrong. I mean, it happens.
No, so Denise and I were talking about this is like sometimes we read a little bit differently where Denise will get sort of like, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, like sometimes you get stuff like just that comes at you, whether,
Yeah.
right? I don't
Yeah.
always have stuff like hit me that hard. So I was able to sort of navigate through and then not feel anything. But as we're looking at it now, I feel like this picture brings us to a better understanding of what Gabby was supposed to, why she was here, and what is she here to teach. Because every soul is here for a reason and here to teach and learn. And when I say teach, I don't necessarily mean teach as a teacher or even on a large scale as Gabby, teaching individually your siblings, your family members, your coworkers, your animals. And when we say teach, it just means your behaviors, whether good or bad, are teaching and assisting others in their evolution. So I'm looking at her picture over here. Let's look at this and see what we got. Because I feel, first off, the immediate response is like, how is that even real? Like, paranormal investigators spend years trying to grab orbs, trying to get something
Right.
that's not a light, that's not a reflection. And this thing is just so big, it's undeniable.
It's like,
uh
here I
i
am.
I feel a collection. Like when you say grandfather, to me, that feels like ancestors aligning. And that's where this orb was just massive, because there was this massive alignment that needed to take place. And it feels like the grandparents, but ancestors, which now includes Gabby,
Mm-hmm.
in that ancestral line, there's this sense of them needing to come down to realign, because everything was like the energy of the family and the DNA was just like jagged because of what happened, the suffering, and of course, and it feels like they came in to just realign. And it feels like there was this calming presence that came down, whether they realized it or not. Because listen, when you're in the throes of grief, which can be years, as we know, um, we don't always feel those subtleties. Sometimes we do, but that's what it feels like they did, was came in and just.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really important for people to view this and experience this, and people who don't normally talk about the paranormal or talk about energy to experience this, because Gabby's presence has been very close to earth for a very long time, to be of service to the family and to all of the people that watched her. She's
Mm-hmm.
feeling this gratitude, but also responsibility, and not in an unhealthy way, but to continue to be there for those that were there for her. Something that she wants others to learn through what she experienced was her lack of her inability to see her value. She sees her value now, but she
Mhm.
never saw her value. And that's something that only she could have discovered and worked on. It doesn't matter how many times you as a parent know, you can tell your kids you're worthy, you're this, you're that. If you aren't feeling it for whatever reason, and she wasn't, she never allowed herself to fully embrace that. And and I know that there is, I know that I meant to mention this. I know that there's a psychic who um actually worked with this family regularly and would speak on it regularly. So I don't want to tread on that. But if we're talking about what Gabby was here to teach, why her soul was here, and why it was here to, what it was here to teach, her teaching was about self worth and value. Who do you have there?
This is Hilarion, and it's about divine healing and
Ah,
honoring your sensitivity. So, when you were speaking about her, I think as a young child and a young woman, she was very sensitive and probably got a little bit of, don't be so sensitive. And
mm,
yet, that was her gift. And she didn't
mm,
realize that was her gift until she was on the other side. And then she realized that her gift was being around other people because she had such a presence in her van life
mhm,
that she was just mesmerized by how many people were following her story
mhm,
just for the fun of the adventure, not
mhm,
unfortunately, now that she's on the other side, she sees where some of this even more came in, but she wants people to know that she's grateful. She has so much gratitude for
mhm,
her sensitive nature and for everybody that followed along on her adventures.
mhm. I agree with that, and I also feel like she was, what worked so well for her was that she was authentic. I mean,
Yes.
she was very authentic, and when she was feeling forced to not be as authentic, or to do things um that were more structured for a specific reason, to get a specific response, whatever that
Right.
meant, that started to become uncomfortable for her.
She,
And bless you.
thank you.
And so what she was here to learn and to emulate was authenticity. And even up until her last moments, there was an authenticity in what she was experiencing that we all witnessed. Who's
And
that?
this is Mary Magdalene and the Teacher Awakens. So she was being divinely guided by her feminine, her feminine side into she didn't want to fit into that box of got to do it this way to play with the algorithm and da 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 da. She was like, no, I want to do it the way I want to do it,
Mhm,
and just to really she just wanted to share what she was doing and what she was going
mhm.
through because I don't remember the timeline of it, but I think it was during a time. Was it during? I'm sorry. Was it 2020 when she was?
I don't know what year.
Yeah, I don't
I
either, but it was. I think it was around that time frame where,
I don't have it.
um,
Yeah.
like somewhere around the between 2020 and 2022. Maybe one of our listeners knows more specifically,
Here,
but
2021. She was
okay.
reported missing in 21. Yeah.
Okay. So because of that, people, depending on where you were living, you might have still had some restrictions and you might not have been able. So people were also living vicariously through her as she
Mhm.
traveled, and she got to teach van life. And it was very appealing for a lot of people because they were like, well, maybe I can do that and I could get out of the house or whatever. So she
Mhm.
was really, sharing her gifts with the world.
Yeah, she was. And to if we go back to this, what does her soul want us to learn from this experience? Well, she brought her viewers on an authentic experience all the way up until the end. Is she expressed authenticity in what we bore witness to. And now that she's passed, and she shares with us the value of self-worth and understanding that, and not allowing others to undermine that. If this is her lesson for all of us, then what was she here to learn? She was here to learn. It's like they're showing me like this butterfly that just sort of like comes in briefly. Like butterflies don't live very long. They just come in briefly and then they go. But when they're there, there's this moment of presence. Like, have you ever had, I'm being shown like this, like reminding us, like, have you ever had like a butterfly just like land right in front of you? And there's this moment of, oh, there's a butterfly right there. And it pulls you present in that moment. It pulls you present. And I feel like her purpose, now this isn't a purpose she was conscious of. We all have purpose we're conscious of or unconscious of, but either way, that there's multiple purpose in our life. One of her purpose was to pull consciousness forward, pull being present forward. So she was constantly trying to get her parents to be present, to see what, to see her. And not, she wasn't that she wanted them to see her in a selfish way. She wanted her parents to stop. I think they were fighting all the time. And so she was continuing to try to pull focus on the present moment, which was her. And again, I say this, she wasn't doing this from a human conscious perspective. We're talking about what someone's purpose in this life was. That purpose is not, I'm going to be a singer or I'm going to be a, influencer. That's a part of your existence, but that is not the purpose of your existence. When we talk about purpose, it's going to go deep under into a subconscious place, unconscious place. And then there's also going to be this more conscious version of it. Her unconscious version of her purpose was to pull focus away from the fighting that was happening in the family and onto this sweet presence that was very joyful and very innocent. Whether or not that worked is not for us to judge. It worked after she passed.
Yeah. And when I disappeared out of the screen, this card had fallen out of the deck onto the floor, and it confirms what you were saying, and it's light activation. And so her soul was here to bring light to whatever it is that she was doing, whoever it is that she was spending time with. And like you said, she was trying to get her parents to be more present, whether it was, and like you said, it wasn't like, hey, look at me, I'm over here doing something. It was like, will you get out of your cocoon and pay attention to what's going on around you in the world, and that sort of thing, because because we all do, because we get as humans, we get caught up in the I've got to get this done and this done and this done, and we get that laundry list of things that we have to do. And I feel like she was trying to get her parents to just stop and smell the roses, as they say. That it's like, no, you just need to be here right now. Let's feel that dirt under your feet, or like you said, look at that butterfly, how it landed. It was like, oh, hi, there you are, right? I mean, and she was really just, her purpose was to bring that light to the world, even though, it was a short time. I think she brought a lot of light to a lot of people based on her adventures in her van life. And as tragically as that ended, she really left a beautiful gift.
Yeah, she did. She really did. I think that there is the underbelly of domestic violence, of certain men not being held accountable because of the way they look or behave, or there's an assumption that they would never do that. And that whole underbelly exists too, and it brings all of this also brought to light the underbelly of domestic violence and the seriousness of it. So there's so many teachings, and that would be an example of a more conscious teaching that was brought to the table, because that's what's in the forefront, right, of our self-worth. And anyone who's been in abusive relationships understands, I've been there, so I understand that way of thinking, and of not getting out, not necessarily not knowing how to get out, but just not being ready to get out. And unfortunately, in this situation, it felt like she was becoming more aware of how deeply dangerous he was. And she was becoming more aware, and sort of like finding, even though those last few images, like, they show her very distraught. When you go in, when you look at that picture from an intuitive perspective, that is someone who was distraught, but also clear on what was happening. And when you look at it intuitively, you can understand this was someone that was starting to see what was happening, how it was happening, and was getting ready to make her move to sort of navigate away from that. And unfortunately, in abusive situations, that can make the abuse expand and get worse. And that's what we were bearing witness to, was her becoming that, consciousness, and going, hey, I'm seeing this, and I'm emotionally responding to it, which was fine and appropriate, and was on her way to shift it. And the thing is, she almost had this talent at, is she was navigating it very gently. She wasn't combative. She knew she had to be very careful with how she did it. And she was just a really, really smart girl.
Yeah, she was trying to get to a safe location before she, for, as the proverbial saying is, rip the Band-Aid off. She was trying to get someplace safe. And when you were talking about that, Lady Portia came up, and as hard as it is, it all happened in divine order. Like, she started to become very aware, and and a little bit, to go back to the domestic violence thing, the subconscious mind wants to keep us safe. And even though what we're in may not be safe, and it may be completely absurd to an outsider, but the subconscious is like, well, we know what's going to happen here. We don't know what's going to happen if we leave. And
Right.
so the fear of, I don't know what's going to happen if I leave, was stronger than, this is a disaster. And once she got clear on, oh, this has got to stop, then she formulated a plan. And like you said, he could feel the energy shift, and then he got escalated. It escalated. Yes, it escalated. Because if you have not been in a domestic violence situation, it really is hard to understand. It's like, well, why don't you just leave? Because the subconscious mind is it's very powerful, because its job is to keep you safe. And that's the thing that's difficult too. And this will be a conversation for another time, but adrenaline like that, our brain doesn't know the difference if it's good or bad. So we have to talk to it and tell it it's good or if it's bad, because when it panics like that, it's like, seeks cover.
It's very true. It's so true. I feel like too, as we kind of round out to the edges of this case, I feel like I feel a sense of peace with her, and with her, with those around her, meaning those in her family. I'm not saying they're like at peace with her passing, but they're finding this sense of peace. And she just emulates. And that picture, like, once again, let's just show it. That picture was just such a good, a good representation of the balance that's coming back into this family, with the help of her, the grandfathers, the grandmothers, these ancestors that we're seeing in this picture. One of the things that we have been looking to do is, which is why we appreciate this comment here, we want to be able to, yes, if we can find new insight, bring something new to the table, but also try and help all of us with a deeper understanding of why things happen. And sometimes we'll get those answers and sometimes we won't. I think Gabby was a great place to start because she is very open to that communication. She's at peace. Her soul is continuing to expand and evolve. It's not stuck. It's not scared. It's not, in any dark place from what happened.
No, she's moving in and around and through. Almost as if she was still here on Earth.
That's
and
very
she's
true.
enjoying it. She's really enjoying what is now her soul's purpose, her mission. She really seems to be enjoying that. It's almost like what they keep showing me is like a teacher in a classroom, and it's almost like she gets to really teach now, even more from a different, higher perspective. When she drops those little nuggets in their either in their mind or physically, like a picture, a photo, a coin, or whatever. It's like she's really getting them to be aware and pay attention.
We're going to jump off and do a wrap up to continue this discussion a little bit deeper over on Patreon. And we have it. I think somebody referred another case to us that we're going to look into for next week. And so we'll let you guys know, or leave us a comment on what case you'd like us to tackle next. But we will be back next Monday. This Thursday, we're off. And for those of you that want to join us over on Patreon, please do. But that was a really a good read. Thank you, Denise. Thank you for that.
Yeah, no, it was really nice. And it was nice to start off with that little bit of grounding to get kind of in the moment with Gabby.
Yeah. And because I know for us, we tend to, sometimes we're just thrown into these cases and there's like so much trauma. You're just like, So to sort of center ourselves, like as I was even doing it to my meditation, I was like wanting to just, so we weren't just thrown in. Yeah. Okay, you guys. So we'll see some of you guys over on Patreon. Otherwise, we'll see you. We have those on Patreon. We have another case dropping that you haven't seen yet this Thursday. And then we'll be back on Monday. Thank you.
See you later. Thanks.